See, is this working here? Testing one, two. Yeah, I guess it is. Hello, hello. I see audio. I don't know if it's my audio. I guess it is. All right. So, hello, everyone who is watching randomly here finds this. I did notice not long ago that when you do go live, it archives the stream and you could watch it as a normal video. So I was wondering about that. Where it all goes. Yeah. So let's see tonight here. Some nights, you feel down sometimes. I'm a very unique personality, let's put it this way, and yeah, the quantum power cells are doing really good, but I think I pretty well took it as much as I can. With what I have to work with here, I literally did everything at them. I screamed at them. I spit at them. I banged on them. I just joking there with all these variants. But the point is, as much as I could, I explored what I could with that. And, unless I have even like a garage or something, I really don't think I can take it to the next step with that. So I did point a lot of interesting effects and whatnot, but it's, what happens with me is when I don't actually have something to work on, I get really down and depressed. I need to always have something to focus on to keep myself busy. So sometimes I have all these ideas, right? And then I get frustrated because I don't have the machining or whatever to do what I have in my mind. So I sit around on the computer and I find that it's a big waste of time when I just sit there and read stuff I've already read before and I know what I want to do. But it is what it is. And I usually end up not being able to sleep until I think of something new to try. And then finally, I'll try that. But yeah, with me, it's very difficult. Most know I've got, like I said, very unique personality, very unique set of circumstances, you could say. My situation, people keep asking, what do you do for a living? What do you do for work? How do you support yourself? Well, I've said this on in comments here and there. Um, I've got disabilities, but it's nothing that's going to kill me. Just how I am, how I was born. And interestingly enough, with that, um, you see, this brings me to. I've been talking a lot to John Hutchinson very lately, and most of the people know the Hutchinson effect, right? And I honestly didn't know about this stuff till his research till maybe 2 years ago. But ironically, in my own ways, I did a lot of that research and a lot of experimentation like he did. I even had a lab at some point and replicated my own version of the Philadelphia experiment. And basically, when I found out about John and read that, and I knew, and then oh wow, this guy really was around, and he did a lot. I've heard Tom Bearden, echoing the name and everything, but it never really, you hear Tom Bearden talk to people, and it's not. I don't know if it's mean to say, you just think they're no longer around anymore, but that wasn't the case for John. Anyways, I was quite surprised with that. And once I started getting and studying a bit what he was doing and everything, it came really obvious to me, like, holy shit, man, pardon the language, but I was surprised because it's like all the stuff I was doing, but he did it in his own ways and I did it in mine. So I've been really inspired in the last 6 months or so, anyways, with his stuff and realizing that a lot of it, anyways, not all of it, obviously, but a lot of it is applicable to some of the research I was doing, especially in relevant with the scalar waves and the phase variance of the AC wave, and when you mix RF with AC and that sort of thing. And John was very hot in that sort of thing, you know. Meanwhile, I thought I'm only one of the very few that, you know, work with this stuff. And sure enough, of course, there's going to be others. But with that said, John had a very unique set of circumstances too, and in his own ways, you know, had issues with dealing basically with general mainstream society, and that's what happens with me as well, you know, and it's part of my disability, which is the coping mechanisms, and that's triggered by other issues with genetics and whatnot. I'm not gonna get all into the details of that, but one long story short, John and I are very similar in the sense that um, I've got great. That's the main issue, is that I can't really function and associate with the mainstream society very well. I'm kind of like my own realm of things, you know. So with that said, it's a very narrow focus on what I'm interested in, and I have a hard time participating in the corpus and the customs and everything that involves with, you know, what many would consider, you know, living a normal society. So that gives me a lot of time to think and to experiment and to study. Actually, a lot of time, because I don't go out. I don't do the bar thing. I'm I, I'm always at home. I don't feel well. I get panic attacks and such if I go outside too much, out in the open. It's hard to explain, but I that's part of it. You know, a lot of anxiety and panic attacks. So with that said, I know what works for me, right? And eventually you just stick with that and, you know, stay out of trouble and do your own thing. And with that said, you know, I had, you know, you go to the coffee shop once in a while because small town with the parents and such, and you get to know people, not like in detail, but hi Frank, how are you today, right? So I pretty well ended up in one of those situations maybe 4 or 5 years ago. Friendly guy, everybody knew him around town just as a person that goes to the, you know, plus the family and whatever. But you know, that wasn't it for me. It was just some friendly guy at the coffee shop that I'd say hello to once in a while. And sure enough, this person had, you know, landlord had like four houses next to each other on the block and was renting those out for apartments. And one of them was really big, multiple unit, had an attic, basically an empty attic. It was not a complete, just but completely enclosed and heated and everything, but not as an apartment, but more as a storage, right? And we came up with a really good deal, you know. I could put my lab up there and do my experiments, and I have a place. So sure enough, I move all my stuff in there, and I had friends, you know, that anywhere from New York City to Toronto. And those people were in better situations. Some of them were engineers, some of them were ham operators, some of them, you know, had an inheritance and whatnot, and would just, you know, essentially shower me with equipment, you know. And I had to be very careful because, you know, in my situation, being on the support program for disability income support, right? You know, I'm not too sure what it is off my mind, but I think it's like you're not allowed to have more than $5,000 in assets. So I had to make all these agreements, right, where I was just using the equipment. They were lending it out to me because some of the stuff was like NASA calibrated surplus equipment. It still had their stickers. I had the analyzers. I had spectrum analyzers. I had I think even the curve tracer. I had a vector. You know, you can see the actual trace. Anyways, it was all that this stuff, right? And all the high voltage. And I was getting pretty well in there, like in my own version of the Hutchinson effect. And that was I was doing the free energy stuff back then, but I was more focused on replicating the Philadelphia experiment. So I understood it in my own ways. So very active in the ham radio community. Was still hot back then. So I was had friends, people who did two-way radio repairs. So it was easy to you know, I could afford it, but I was able to lend a lot of stuff. You have 1,000 feet of LMR for 100 cable. Can I borrow that for the weekend? I've got a project. I promise I'm not going to snip it. I wanted to use it as my big coils, right? Slam that on the roof in the attic and do some phase shifting with all of that. So here I am with these big coils and all this stuff. And the guy, right, at first it was all nice. And I'm using like all the four roofs, because they're the four houses next. So I'm carefully, strategically trying to figure out how I'm going to phase my signals and where I'd like the target to be and that sort of thing, right? So I started experimenting with that one night. I think it was like early June, maybe 9:30, right? Maybe, half an hour after the sun goes down. So I had built this RF transmitter, right? Because you need the RF part if you understand the Philadelphia experiment and the how Hutchinson does his stuff. It's so anyways, you're mixing all these various waves together, and I needed like a very, very, we're not talking zero current triggers, this is going to flip the breaker kind of current. Sometimes you even need your own batteries isolated to get that impulse you actually need so you don't actually trip the breakers. So anyways, here I am with all of this stuff, and I had to build this RF generator. And it couldn't be any RF generator because, you use a transistor as soon as it gets an inductive kickback, or in RF terms, SWR, high reflective, and the standing wave. Transistors are not good at that. They're matched to a specific impedance, usually 50 or 75 ohms, and you got to stick with that, So I did a lot of research, and I did all this research, and then I find out about it was the Class E, I believe, if I remember correctly, which was essentially using two MOSFETs as a square wave switch through a big inductive coil. And that was good, for low frequency up to about 2 megahertz. And this could handle like incredible, like this could zap you, the very dangerous current manipulations. So, but as far as being able to withstand it, what was unique with this design was it didn't matter what kind of impedance you had. You had these old like rotary variable capacitors and the variac, and you're in there, just tuning for the sweet spot. But it didn't really matter if you were off, because the worst thing that would happen to the generator would be less power, but wouldn't actually run hotter or anything like that by design. So that was essentially my RF generator, which had a peak output power of close to 1,000 watts, folks. I'm not joking. The first coil I did was with just regular cable, not LMR 400, just CB cable. Fired that up for 5 minutes. It could have been worse. Could have caused a fire around them. The whole thing caught on fire. Oh boy. I ran in the backyard, because I just had it on a stick testing, It wasn't on the roof. Oh, Jesus, my God. Imagine if that would have been on the roof. Oh, sometimes we all do, our gaffes, right? And you learn, but there's close calls, right? So I guess I freaked out I was starting to freak out the guy now at this point that let me use the space, right? Because neighbors were starting to complain and such. Because I'm going out there with my recorder and I'm in the backyard. This is coil A, this is coil B, and I've got a field strength meter and I'm documenting everything, right? And meanwhile, the crazy neighbors think that I'm spying on them or some shit like that. And anyways, they start talking to the landlord about it, and I talked about this. One long story short, they make up this thing with the city police. Being in a small town, that nothing happens, folks. You know, when all of a sudden the cops think that there's a Russian spy in town, oh my goodness, you know, just for the news, they come here, they're ready to bust the lab. And they're telling me, you know, they see all this equipment in there and they don't have to know what it's for. They just need probable cause. They had complaints from the neighbors, and they're gonna put me in jail for the weekend, and they're gonna let the judge figure it out. And they did their work, and that's the way it is. But lucky me, you know, I had some lawyer friends and people, you know, in high places. So right on the spot, I'm calling my friend who's a lawyer there, right? So gets on speakerphone with the cop and starts telling him, you know, you realize you can't do that, and you know, I had all the license for my ham radio stuff, and you know, basically it got down to the point that the cop would get fired if he were to do that. So that all went to shits basically after that, thanks to the lawyer. But you know, they were ready, and he was going to do this sleazy thing of, if I'm in jail, then they can put in a search warrant and take all the electronics out without me knowing about it and all this stuff. So anyways, the relationship went really downhill from there, but I was still there for maybe a month or so after. I did a few more experiments. And the last experiment, again with the Philadelphia experiment, this now time I knew that I needed the LMR 400 because the small stuff would catch fire, right? So I properly do my coils. I try this again. And again, like I said, it was like in the early summertime, right? Fire up the exciter and the Tesla coil, and on it goes. But the most weird thing that happens, which really isn't really weird if you know about the Tesla wireless stuff, you know how everybody has Christmas lights, right, hanging from their houses and their decks and everything, right? Yeah, well, this is the middle of summer, you know, at maybe 9:30, 10 o'clock at night. I fired this thing on, and everyone, maybe up to half a mile around the block, all their Christmas lights turned on without being plugged in. Some of them would flicker on their own. Some of them along the line, you know, would turn off, then turn on. It was completely crazy, okay? And neighbors were coming out. You know, I had this old lady. My toaster is making this weird noise. I don't know what's going on. So, you know, at this point, I run upstairs and I shut the whole experiment down. Oh, my goodness. The day after, that freaks out my landlord. I was out of town, went to Cochrane, which is this city, to come and visit my friend. I come back. He decides, you know, to lock me up. That's it. That's all. I don't want you here no more. Not legally allowed to do that, by the way, because I had an agreement with him, but he decided to do that. So I called the cops, but you know, because of that incident, they weren't too, you know, friendly with me. So they basically said, "Bud, you're on your own. It's a civil matter. Go to small claims court." Well, let me tell you, I didn't have the $500 or whatever it cost to go to small claims court, and you have a status of limitation in Canada of like 2 years to do that. So with that said, unfortunately, you know, the people understand that, but I lost all the equipment, thousands and thousands of dollars gone. So, yeah, I've been inspired to do the Philadelphia experiment stuff on the side again, where I left off. John inspired me with that. But I have to be wiser this time around because I got myself in a lot of trouble the first time. Yeah, a lot of trouble the first time. Humanity, I'm telling you, if you do something with untraditional sciences, whatever, you really are on your own, and people start, freaking out. They get scared. They don't understand what's going on. And they start making ridiculous claims like you're a Russian spy. Ridiculous. But yeah, what am I saying? I'm just rambling on and on here because I have nothing to do. That's why. So, Philadelphia experiment, I want to get into some of that again and maybe do. I actually had metal samples. I had the same thing that happened with the transmutations. I had that at the old lab. He still has that, and I don't have them. I was not able to get those back. But I did have similar transmutation effects, such as John did. So you can see how I got oh my goodness when I found out about John a couple of years ago, because it was like, oh my god, story of my life. This is like a clone but slightly different variants down to the same disability. So there must be something common there, right? Tesla, we're all a little bit, I don't want to say different because we're all unique and that's normal to a certain point, but I'm sure you all know what I'm getting at here. So let's see, there's comments. Why would he do that? What are you talking about? Oh, I guess I was just I'm talking about my old lab. I had an old lab, an attic where I would do all my experiments. And I got locked out of it, a really unfortunate, unfair, illegal event. But I had no way to fight it. So I lost much of my equipment. I was literally able to, on my way out, I had a laptop and some of my small stuff. And the rest I never got. So that's what I'm talking about here. I was just rambling. My apologies about that. I'm just rambling. Story of my life. And with that said, I'd like to build a high voltage power supply that could handle the DC at high amperage. That's not going to screw up the mains. So I am thinking, I got 12-volt batteries here, and I'm thinking either a series configuration, bring them up to around 120 volts, pulse them with an old style radio tube vibrator, get the 60 hertz that way directly with no transformers. Series connection, well, you'd end up with loads and more watts as a discharge that you could get from the mains anyways without tripping anything. And for these experiments, you need to have that sudden disruptive current discharge to notice these effects with the varying in phase. So again, since I lost the original one I built, I'm thinking of doing that, but I don't have those parts. So another option would be over here. I've got an old microwave transformer, and I've got this old thing here. I pulled out of a sample from I had a sample unit from Motorola, an old inductive power supply. So these look like, I think, 2 transistors. I think last time I checked, it's already configured. They have their bridge, I guess, to handle. This was made to really handle heavy current. So my work would be figuring out how they had this wired, if I could use the same thing or build my own. The transistors are still mounted on there. And I'm thinking of building my own inverter-ish with the microwave power supply to get my high voltage, high current. Unfortunately, with this stuff here, it's the opposite of what I'm doing with the free energy, promoting low level, low current, zero current. This stuff, unfortunately, especially when you're getting into the quantum entanglement and all that stuff, you need a lot of current to induce. And if you don't know what I'm talking about, the Philadelphia experiment on the CIA reading room a few years ago, all been declassified. There's like maybe 12 hours of reading materials, but it's all there. What components they use, what frequencies they use, under what heat they use, down to what they told people who were bringing them their payload containers to cover up the stories. So that's a really interesting read if you're bored one day, and you're into the Philadelphia experiment, which is Project Rainbow, Project Aquatone. Some keywords to search for that in the CIA site will give you all of the results. They're not very good at publishing it. They have to put stuff declassified, but they don't, promote it. They'll keep it their keywords. So if you don't know what to search for, you might not get it all under the Philadelphia experiment. But if you write Project Rainbow or Project Aquatone, it all shows up on the CIA site. So interesting read there. And basically, if you understand that, you can replicate it. In part, anyways. So what are the comments? Hey, have you done anything more with the scalar waves? Scalar waves, yeah, on and off in the background. Those are interesting. Studying videos, yeah, that's great. I'm just reading the comments here. All I know is stay away from Tesla. EVs. Oh, geez, yeah. You'd think that there'd be something about that guy, right? He must really be in his universe or something, because to know about Tesla and to go that direction with all the pollutants and the toxic batteries and just the raw inefficiency of the whole setup and how much it taxes the grid, that's not the solution to quote unquote green energy, right? But I think it's the greatest hoax of our time, probably paid off politicians, but they have to pass it off as green so people don't complain too much. And they manufacture those batteries and those chemicals, and I guess stupid people won't know the difference. But it doesn't work like that, I don't think. But with that said, it's weird, right? Elon Musk, like, either he knows he's playing the game, he's deliberately hiding all this technology, or he really is so in his own little bubble with his SpaceX stuff that he doesn't know. He really legitimately doesn't know. But that's kind of hard to believe, right? I mean, come on now. I mean, he's got labs and everything. I mean, he hasn't occurred any of the stuff I did, even by accident. It's hard to believe. It really is. So I think, I like what he's doing with Twitter X, but I think there's something deeper going on there with him. Doesn't make sense to me. It just doesn't. I mean, he would have the technology to make his cars self-sustainable, just based on everything I've been talking about in the last 2 years. Now that would be worth it, right? I mean, charge it once and only pay for the minimal losses. So go 800 miles before having to charge it again. Yeah, that would be more practical. Why don't he does that? I mean, some of it is pretty basic too, just minor modifications to what he's got now. Well, I guess I'll never know. AM 1710, yeah, me too back in the day. AM. If you want to have fun and not get in trouble, the little Procaster transmitters are good. It'll get you about 6 miles or so with a good setup. But you know, nobody's into radio too much anymore, especially AM. Who's going to listen to AM? It was a lot of fun though, the rewarding experience, to know that your signal, such a flea powered outfit, if you set it up right, can go so far, right? So in essence, we're doing the same thing with energy systems, and the reward of efficiency is what comes after. You've done a good job, right? The same way as, oh, I can hear my signal 6 miles away and it's only a few milliwatts. It's all about efficiency all the way around, isn't it? Yeah, the Eclipse thing, I've got some Tesla coils here, and I was thinking of I've got like a Faraday cage and fire up some Skiller receivers and seeing what pops up. It's an idea. Yeah, that's the thing. There's no profit in it, and that's what I was saying. He's all of Elon Musk. It's business, right? It's all about the money, I guess. But at a certain point, what good is the money if the Earth is no longer there? I guess those people have a pod and they're going to go to Mars or something. I don't know. That's just a joke, but maybe it's not. We're the ones that is all going to roast in this planet when it goes to, you know what. Yeah, the light bulbs used to be good. I read about that. Isn't there like a firehouse that still has one of the originals that's been running for like years and years and years, and it's had a live webcam. I don't know if it's still going, but that's real. I mean, a light bulb doesn't have to go out in like 3 months. I mean, that's BS. That's a good example there for sure. Same thing with vacuum tubes, right? I mean, if you know what you're doing, why should they go bad? And those are the best for manipulating these kind of energy scalar waves, and that transistors will blow up to a million pieces. Vacuum tubes will go like, what just hit me here? Oh, okay, whatever. I'll just keep going. So there's the advantage there, the primitive had its benefits for sure. Then they screwed it all up with technology. Yeah, the firehouse thing, really, really cool. Too bad there ain't any more of those that we know of. They were obviously manufactured. Probably the military has them stashed somewhere. Probably got like 10,000 of them. Yep, that's what it was back in the day, right? And sometimes it's the impurities, believe it or not, that made the rudimentary crude system more efficient. Impurities in metals that we wouldn't have today because our technology is so fine. But by doing that, you take away some of the unique interactions that you used to observe you know, when you're dealing with unusual electromagnetic phenomena. So that's real, like, so yeah, sometimes it backfires on us. So what was I wanting to do here? Oh yes, build a switch, but that's a project. I have to reverse engineer that transistor module and figure out what it's doing exactly. If I could use it, I'd like to use it because it's really heavy duty. That'll pulse that microwave transformer nice. I'm thinking maybe 8 car batteries on there. Get my high voltage, high current. These experiments, I don't need to be sustained for hours. At least if I could keep it going for 10 minutes, I'd be happy, right? But it's something that would blow up every breaker. The mains is just not enough juice to do it. But with 12-volt batteries, it's easy to stack up the current. But I get a little scared because I don't want to melt myself either in another dimension by accident. So, but no, I have a good idea what frequencies do what. There's certain ones you want to stay away from. You don't want to mess around too much with that gamma stuff. X-rays. That's interesting, but if you're set up, soft X-rays are not too bad, actually. Hard X-rays I wouldn't play with. Water card. Didn't he use a special type? Da, 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 da. Yeah, I think that was the reminiscence of the when you pulse the water at a certain frequency, you get more efficiency out of it. I don't have the whole thing in front of me there, but I made a movie about that a while back. Something similar. What was it called now? Hydro Freak Electrolyzer or something like that. I've got all the theory that I could pull out on some similar system, anyways. That's interesting. If you can, very interesting. A lot of interesting stuff out there. Really, I wish I could do it all. I really, just try everything and see. Debunk them all one by one. This one works. This one doesn't. This one works, but he deceived us because he said it's this, but it works like that, right? So that could be a lot. I'd love to do that. Just try everything. Don Smith, that's some more interesting stuff, but like the Tesla and Bedini, a lot of it is resonance. And then you're stepping in a domain where you really need like a radio like kind of shop. If you have a buddy that used to do Motorola stuff for the truckers and stuff, around the area, then you might be in luck because they have scopes and spectrum analyzers and service monitors, and you could actually do a varying resistance sweep, frequency sweep, because these systems here, I keep saying you want low resistance, but that varies with frequency too, and that's hard to do a fix on when you're dealing with frequency. So there's that to think of too. I don't have that equipment. Would tell you a lot if you could draw a plot of the actual curve of the resistance with the frequency sweep of these coils. It would tell us a lot. Mm. Yeah, the disease, the frequencies, it's all at the atomic scale. Everything has a frequency, and it's just a matter of finding that. And what seems to be the common variant here is introducing a phase of the opposite of whatever the frequency target is. And a little bit more complicated than that, but in Tom Bearden terms, you introduce that time reversal mirror replica. And it happens at the atomic scale, apparently. So he says in optical physics, well, that work, apparently it should, because frequency is frequency, right? Yeah, but again, right, the hospitals, that's a business. The medical industry, the care, the medicine, and all that. I don't think they would really want a magic box that anyone could just step into and dial a issue and okay, you're good to go home now. They also have a population issue. The earth is overpopulated. They got to bring that down. They don't talk about that, but they got to bring that down. COVID probably, quote unquote, COVID probably did a good job, but they're far from their target. That gets pretty scary too when you think about it. Ah, well, maybe we could expand to the moon or something. Yes, the music skill is really something. It's actually taught in the Masonic rituals. The harmonics of the musical notes and their relevance to the frequency of the universe. It's all about the essentially the golden ratio. And yeah, so a lot of the occult stuff is not really that quote unquote occult after all. It's all natural, what you would consider natural laws, natural sciences, but because it's so far, non mainstream, most of us put the occult label on it when really it's quantum physics, really at the core. As above, so below, the Masonic saying. Well, that's just a parallel universe. You know, great if you want to go there, but you don't need their help for that. If you know how we're all in infinite universes, and but they have to spend their whole lifetime to learn that and spend all the money and think they're part of some. They die, they get reborn, they're offered in quote unquote infinite life with this new knowledge. And they want to keep our below nice under control so that it doesn't affect their above. It's just again the natural laws of one potential difference. What something over here affects something over there. They learn all that, but as an ancient, you know, reworded, reframed, very, to suit their agenda, so to speak, but all based on the same very foundational laws that Tesla explored. There's nothing hoogie boogie. There's nothing mystical about it. Um, the rituals, it all falls down to ancient radio, harmonics, even the tones that the people sung and resonate to, the chants and the hums. That's all part of it. Totally untraditional to our day and age. We'll just use a cell phone, right? But if you were to think about all the geometry of the temples and create the perfect resonance, and you can modify gravity waves with that if you hit the right, it's all frequencies, right? I mean, the ancients were the so the high priest, they were the ones that had the education that controlled at the time in the ancient days, right? So they knew about the mechanisms and systems, but they kept it to themselves. The majority of people didn't even know how to read back then, right? So you were enlightened, you were privileged, and you had a lot of money if you went to school. So, oh my God, I'm just rambling on and on here. Yeah, frequency. Frequency is the universe. That's the big secret. Tesla knew it. And everybody that knows it today is trying to make it their own little secret. It's no secret. It shouldn't be either, really. It shouldn't be. But when you talk like this, you can't like go in a coffee shop at McDonald's and start saying these things to just somebody, right? That's sitting there next to you. They'll look at you and they'll think you're fit for the asylum, right? That's the problem. And that's another thing with all this stuff, I'm happy at least I got YouTube and my followers and all of you folks, because it would be pretty boring because there's really nobody to talk to. Not around here anyways. Without being, the little bit I did with the Philadelphia experiment, oh my goodness, that got me in so much trouble. I want to do it again, but I gotta watch it this time. I'm gonna be smarter. I'm not gonna tell the locals what I'm up to. probably documented for my YouTube. Nobody local watches it within 300 miles, so who cares, right? Nobody knows me in my community, which is ironic. But that could be good, no break-ins, no vandalisms, no Snoopy Snoops. So a lot of people would say, what are you complaining about? You haven't made, especially in this kind of research. So all I need is a little back shed there somewhere for all my stuff, and I'll be good to go. He goes deep into the geometry of the vacuum. Nice. Yeah, I live in Ontario, Northern Ontario, very, very far. Cochrane, Ontario, about 8.5 hours north of Toronto, or maybe 800 kilometers. Yeah, I call it the end of the world because you can't go any more north on the highway. It turns and it goes out towards BC. So you can't drive. Yeah. So that we're north of the 49 parallel. Small two-bit town. Unfortunately, I don't have really the contacts or the money, but I do want to get out of here. I hate it. It's too isolated, nobody to talk to. But you need money, right? You need money to move. And being near Toronto, Montreal, whatever, pick one, Vancouver, it's all, thousands of miles away. So it's not an easy fleet to do. But one day I would like to, one maybe if I make it to 50 or over, I wouldn't want to be here. Not by then, no. So what I'm thinking about is, applying for housing in the next year or two to all these places I'd like to live. It could take 25 years or more, probably more like 30 now, because these waiting lists are all huge. And maybe by 50, I'll be lucky. That'll be my ticket out of here. But until then, it's this kind of thing. Keep to myself, do my experiments, do some research, look for scrap when I can to do my experiments. We used to have a value village. We don't have it no more. It closed down. I used to love that place. All the stuff, half the stuff they didn't know what they had. They put in little bags, $3.99. All kinds of. I must have bought 3 boxes of power supplies. All these power supplies that outlived their original device that they powered. People don't know what to do with them. So Value Village has like a whole freaking wall of these power supplies, oddballs, 48 volts, 24 volts, 2.5 volts, 1.2 volts. I'm like, who would build a power supply that's 1.2 volts? Probably for shavers, right? But hey, whatever I could grab, it was so cheap. I just grabbed it all because I knew one day if I need power supplies or whatever, speakers, oh my God, speakers, magnets. I would rip all that stuff apart. Motors from tape drives, and they give away all this stuff. They're not around no more. So that was a big dent for me, really. On my situation, I'd grab all my power transistors from old amps for a couple dollars. Yeah, Value Village was great for that. I don't know, maybe in the US you guys have the Salvation Army. I don't know if it's as good for all the electronic stuff, but that would be an option too. What am I drinking? I'm drinking coffee. Extra on the caffeine. It's a bad habit to do at night, especially when you're trying to sleep later on. But what happens is I run out of energy, and I don't want to pass out too early, and it gives me the kick I need. Just reading the comments here. Yeah, well, being isolated, I guess that's part of it. Gives me a lot of time, and people don't bother me too much. I got my phone here. I think it rings like once a week. So, I mean, that's quiet, really. Sometimes too quiet. Every human being sometimes needs to have a bit of just social interaction. I'm not even talking about all that other stuff. Been there, done that when I was in my teen years, got over it. This is the stuff that interests me a lot. And like I said, when I'm just at home and I'm not working on anything, I don't feel well. I feel like this panic I always have to be preoccupied. If I'm not preoccupied, I don't feel well. I don't feel like, it's hard to explain, but it's the anxiety and everything, and my disability and everything gets worse, and then I get all tight and I can't move. And, oh, but for some reason, when I'm doing something I like, everything kind of goes in the background. I stay focused on that, and I'm not worried about what other people think or not having somebody local to talk to or something like that. I just focus on my experiment and get the results and fire off a video if there's something, relevant to talk about, an update or whatever. Just tonight, the reason, I'm live now because as I said earlier on in the video, I've pretty well taken these quantum power cells to the max I could here with what I got to work with. Very, really interesting stuff. Very pleased with it. It's just, I have limits and that's as far as I can take it. So we will be moving on to other stuff now. I was essentially working with trying to figure out simplified version of Don Smith before all this quantum power cell stuff thing came into the picture. So I think I'll be focusing, and a lot of people were liking the Don Smith, so I think I'm going to focus on that a bit. But it's more challenging because it's difficult not having all the equipment, but that's part of the challenge, right? If we can find simpler ways, less tight specifications to get the same results, maybe. That's what I'd like to explore, always trying to find, better ways to get the results. So, and of course, I'd like to do more of that Hutchinson stuff, which up to like 2 years ago, I didn't even know was Hutchinson effect. But he's been around, and I'm going to build I know exactly how I want to build my power supply for that. I think I'm going to do the experiments at my parents' folks. They live out in the country. So I can do it in the backyard. I can bring the batteries over, like, 1,000 feet away from the road and the buildings, and try that. But my ideas is not so much that I want to transmutate materials. I'm more into the multi-dimensional aspect of it, quantum entanglement, that kind of thing. And the interaction with these temporary fields and effects. That's what drives me, anyways, in that field. But I understand how it can spook out some people who wouldn't understand what it is that I'm experimenting with or interested in. And that's just personal. What's the reason? I have no clue. What drives me to do this? I don't know. I always liked high voltage stuff, radio stuff. I was always into the ham radio, but I was never into it for the show to talk like a CB. I was like, I want to tune an antenna. I want to get it to work as best as it can. I want to figure out its angle of radiation. I want to beam that where I need to go. And it was all the technical mumbo jumbo behind it all, the maze and trying to get that milliwatt to go in that one direction where you could use it to maximize, your listenership and all that kind of thing. So that's what I liked is all of the background stuff, not to make contacts and hey, how's the weather and all that. I can go on the internet if I want to do that. But I like the theory, the concept of the field interactions. There was always something, from since I was 7 years old that just drove me to that. So so yeah, the free energy rabbit. He must have been my inspiration when I was a kid. How does that drum keep going and going and going? And I think that's where I got that I got acquainted to the song "I'm Walking on Sunshine." Katrina and the Waves or something like that. Is it Katrina and the? Ah, anyways, it wasn't in my time, so pardon me, folks. Mm. No, no, the receiver, as I was explaining, it's all about the phase variance and the shifting the phase and the phase cancellations of certain parts of it and the mixing of the high scalar with the high potential field and then modulating that to make it compatible at what you want. But I know it's much more complicated than that. It's just, yeah. Yeah, of course it's vibration. It's all vibration. And, it's really funny because there's the argument where, oh, radio waves are transverse. Yes, but there's also a longitudinal aspect to them. Most people don't understand that. The some zeros are already built into the wave for a part of the cycle. So automatically you're going to have scalar possibilities right there if you know how to interact with it without doing anything to it. It's already there for you. So, that's what I like doing is finding, well, if nature's already given you something, why are we using it in its native form? We got to do more of that, just generally speaking, instead of trying to transduce and convert something and lose 90% of its efficiency. That's the craziest thing humanity, generally speaking, does. It's a bad trend. I guess we're stuck in our ways or something. Yeah. Well, that's the thing. There's a certain part of the wave which is outside of time, so you don't have that natural wave propagation like you would if it were a sound wave or even a ripple. But that's decoupled from the main wave, but it originates from it, which is interesting because leads to really interesting time effects if you want to like send information at distance and stuff. This is where they argue, you can go faster than the speed of light. What time is it here? 10:45. Not too bad. Not too bad. So yeah, now I'm kind of in the bleh. Not too sure I'm going what to do next. Generally speaking, for the free energy stuff, I've got a whole crowd now. By the way, I was really excited when I reached 2,000 a couple days ago. I was like, never thought I would. So now I'm a little bit like, oh my goodness. But I don't want to just produce content to say I'm producing content either, right? Just to fill out the spaces and just be like everybody else almost. So is to think very hard to really come up with things that are actually worthwhile, you know, talking about. Because I could go on YouTube and show a light bulb running on a battery every day and talk about it for 20 minutes and monetize it, but that's not what people want to see on my channel, you know? Isn't zero at that moment. Well, that's what exactly I'm saying, that AC and RF has the sum zero built into the wave naturally at that moment. The wave isn't stopped, it's just the part of the cycle where it's at. So a force is still there, is what I'm getting at for that moment. Even though it would register at net zero on our plot, you know, during the wave cycle, it doesn't actually go for a moment, right? So, yeah, of course, that's a big consideration, actually. About your cell, what is the the white one? Is it something? The white one of my cells. Uh, these ones here are simply done with the PEG electrolyte mixed with a few drops of water into a gel, and I put the true electrodes in there, let it sit overnight, and nothing else in there. This works okay, but they work better when you condition them as electrolytes afterwards. I did it by heating it after in the on low on the oven for a few minutes until it got into like a gel, and then I put it in the freezer, put a 9-volt battery on there, let it cool for half an hour, and that seems to do the trick. Stays at around 1 volt or so. Um, those are good for electrolytes, and these ones here with the copper oxide in the mix, hard as a rock, by the way. This is what I like about the copper oxide. I can't even bend that. I can hard as a rock. This one here seems to hold up voltage. It's the oldest, ironically, of all the cells. This was like the first one I made. And holds up the best. Always voltage in this one, no significant drops. And it does really well. The most significant pronounced effect when I pulse it in reverse. So major, and I like this because you know it's very brick-like with the copper oxide. It adds that because what happens here with just the PEG mix, you get a crystalline salt block like substance that's very easy to crack and break. I can't drop this unless it breaks. And also it's very water soluble. So just by holding it, you can see how it wants to melt in my hands here. So with that said, not very good to if you're gonna have it outside without proper shielding because the moisture will melt these away. But with the copper oxide, it adds like a protective layer. My wet moist finger doesn't really, it doesn't do, it's like cement, you know, there's no melting, there's nothing like that. So it really helps with the consistency once you dry it out. And I had other reasons to do the copper oxide too, as I describe in the PDF and all my documents. So this one seems to be working the and variants of. See, I got this one here, which was the same thing but smaller version. Does the same thing, copper oxide and PEG. See how hard that is? You can hear it tuck tuck tuck. Hard as a rock. This one here, same idea, with cement instead. So I tested all kinds of different variants, even different electrodes here. There's another cement one with copper and zinc. Works fine, by the way. Haven't tried it as an electrode yet, though, but it puts out the 1 point some volts. See, I could actually probably take it out of the mold now. It's been dry for a while. Yeah, look at that. The cement just completely dried in there. Oops. Nice. It's literally. Huh, look at this. Isn't this cute? That's the cement. And just so I'm not screwing myself more, I'm going to test the voltage on that right now to see. Yep, just like the other ones. 0.6. Of course, different metals here. I ran out of the optimal carbon and the magnesium. So, but yeah, I mean, there it is. This one looks nice. It's nice and smooth with the cement, you know. Yep. So there's the cement one. Just took it out of the mold. And it puts out 0.67 of a volt. Pretty, I had like 0.7, I think, when it was wet with these two specific metals. So yeah, not a significant drop at all. This is pretty cool. So I've actually got, look at this, all my cells are on this tray. And every cell has a slight varying composition that I gave like every possible test that I could think of to observe for effects here. So yeah, still taking keeping an eye on this on the side here every day. Yeah, something to do, huh? Keeps us all out of trouble and helps whoever may be into that. So let's read where we're at here. Graphite, if it's conductive, it would help the graphite would actually help the electron flow, no? If it's conductive. Um, concrete cupcake, yeah, basically. Yeah, there's a lot of combinations to try. Yeah, I mean, I've got some crazy ideas, but I mean, we're getting into the realm of no longer non-toxic, let's say, if I would try different combinations, but would definitely get interesting possible. Yeah. Well, the acidic materials essentially just logical, especially the sodium acids, right? Because that would corrode. No, we're trying to avoid corrosion, so I'm thinking that anything that would facilitate that process would promote corrosion. Maybe I'm no expert. I'm just going along with this. So don't hold your breath to it. But John was making his pancake stack move. If I don't understand that one. You mean his battery? I guess his like Zamboni pile. I call it a Zamboni pile, but is that what you're talking about? Sorry for the typing. It's okay. Sorry for reading out loud. Um, Borax shows it could help to slow the corrosion. Yeah, that's what I'm trying to get at. The cells are solid, but the thing is, we have to be fair to say that for about a day they're not. So you have to still think of finding electrodes that will have little to very minimal corrosion, even under quote unquote no load. So there's obviously ways to deal with that. It's just a matter of picking a good set of electrodes and don't load your cells while they cure, and they'll be minimal. Once they're cured and dry, obviously, no more corrosion than what my scissors would get from staying on the table for 10 years. So yeah, I mean, that's the obvious benefit of the cells is they're dry cells. So, yeah, so I still have this like big magnesium anode rod here that I still know. I was gonna cut it up into a bunch of pieces because I ran out of magnesium. Uh, I don't know if I should use some of this because I have another recipe from another video where literally I just use a few flakes of magnesium and I put vinegar in that, and that generates enough hydrogen to run motors for like half a day through a fuel cell. Just collect the hydrogen from the reaction. The magnesium bubbles like when you put vinegar and baking soda in a balloon, and it does the same thing with magnesium and vinegar, but the gas happens to be hydrogen. So direct that into a fuel cell, and and it just keeps going. You think the magnesium would. I just had a little flake of it. A few flakes lasted several hours. It powered. I had a 9-volt fuel cell, a half a watt, no problem. So, but people argued and they got all poopy that, well, you got to pay for magnesium, you got to pay for vinegar, so really, no free lunch. Okay, well, I just thought it was the chemistry, anyways, was interesting to me. So I experimented with that. Maybe people can get magnesium in scrap yards or something for on the cheap. I mean, is it that expensive to put a bit of vinegar in there and get yourself energy out of it? I thought it was really cool, but nobody really liked it. So whatever. Yeah, everybody keeps talking about that stuff there, but there was actually a comment on my channel that somebody does batteries with it as a material. So there's a possibility, you know. I'd have to have every chemical to try them out. And hopefully that wouldn't give me a bad combination. So you got to study your combinations beforehand too, right? Because sometimes you get unintended reaction, especially in chemistry. And I didn't go to chemistry school or anything, so I learned everything on my own. I have to like, you know, I hate Chat GPT, but sometimes thank God it's there because it's like if I make sodium blah 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 with blah blah blah, will I blow myself up? It'll tell me at least, you know. It goes, no, don't do that. Don't do that. You're crazy. Why? Oh, can't say a matter of safety and security. Well, you're no help. Yeah, I saw another Google thing like that, another variant of crystal batteries. Actually, it was a California school that did it. I think they just ripped off John's idea, really, with the crystals. But it was, I mean, I don't know whose idea it is. John Hutchinson, John Bedini, Tom Bearden. They're all in the same fields. They experimented all with that stuff. So let's see. Future, what to do. Yeah, I'm just gonna keep monitoring those cells in the background and observe for a few weeks, and then I'm just gonna carefully pack them in a box and put them in storage, labeled all the compositions so I don't forget what is what, and move that out of the way for now, and move on to something else. I have a pretty good idea of the batteries. Well, the batteries. Um, these cells gave me inspiration for other kinds of circuitry I'd like to try as well for switching and such. So I'd like to try that as well, and possibly if I get some good results with that, it'll give me some good material to post on YouTube about different kind of switching circuits and mechanisms and that kind of thing. That's always a lot of fun. So I think I could take advantage of what I was observing in the cells pretty easily in circuits. So, and I have ideas to make it like enhanced, like really, really enhanced. And then put a little bit of Don Smith in that and modulate that. Anyways, one thing at a time, I guess. Clearing the table here for the next thing. Mm. Look what you're doing to pulsing in the solid battery. Yeah, well, that's the thing. These things, when you pulse them, they generate a pulse back, more enhanced at reverse polarity because of the way that the cell equal. It's a displacement current as it equalizes, and you see the curve as it generates a waveform. So an additional system to tap into for sure. But what's interesting is the electret properties, the self electret properties of these cells. So either you condition them or not. What happens is the electrode actually is a capacitor. So you get the natural potential of the cell, which is 1 point some volt, which is very little current. But that initial, what would be like the capacitive discharge of the electrode that could give you that sharp, heavy, which would be the equivalent of maybe not, I wouldn't say amps a second because of the small, but maybe milliamps a second. And relative to that, maybe 1 amp or so the cell generates off its base voltage. So what I'm getting at is stack, as I was saying in my PDF, 100 of these wafers to build up your 100 volts. And if you pulse the cell, simply switch it with a vibrator, like an old, for the tube, a vibrator, like the old tube radios that would vibrate, literally vibrate at 60 hertz. That pulses the cell and it'll re-gauge. They actually work more efficiently because then the electrode properties are able to kick in over and over. So you're using the electrode portion to intensify each pulse. So not only are you getting the base, but the additional discharge of the electrode and the self-gauging for the next pulse. So by pulsing these cells, whichever way you want to pulse them, greatly intensifies, in many cases could double the efficiency of the cell. So completely unusual versus a traditional battery, right? You don't get double efficiency just by, but because of the electrode and self-read, you got two systems working in, layers here, and one intensifies the other. So that's pretty interesting. I don't use any coils in the cells. I just pulse the cells with a battery or a switch. No coils needed. As far some people have mentioned it for experimentation, what would happen if you make a coil as an actual electrode and soak it and dry it in the electrolyte and harden that and have some sort of hybrid setup. But I haven't tried that yet. That's not really, might help, but not needed as far as I know. I pulsed it with a 9-volt battery manually and reversed and noticed the spike came back stronger. So I then hooked up a switch to it that facilitated that, and I would do it for me with the 9, and I was able to watch it continuously and experiment with it and see how that worked out. That's all I did. No coils, just a switch. You don't need a coil for a switch, just a transistor or a MOSFET with a controller. Yep, that's the next step, the piezoelectric for the cell stack I'd like to do. So in my earlier videos, I actually covered that, where you wafer the piezo material with the cell material and go back and forth. I was considering an electret, but given that this solid state electrolyte peg that actually makes it a bit more easier now, because I already got my electret, I already got my solid state electrolyte cover. So now it's the electrodes with addition of the piezo plate in between that, maybe somehow. And yeah, I mean, just or a perfect symmetry of, piezo cell, piezo cell, piezo cell sort of thing. As long as the symmetry is perfect, in theory, you could just bang it like John did, and it'll kickstart the process and just feed it back. But the problem with feeding back something like that, because the cells are self-regaging, if you don't load them down, they will eventually poof, So that's the issue with trying to self-loop something that actually self-regages from its input. See, it's not like running a Bedini system where you need a battery isolated from the charge and the run, and you manually flip them over, and the run will eventually wear out. You see, the run doesn't wear out, and if you self-loop the system, the run will get to a point where it will no longer tolerate unless you load it down. Actually, John had that. He claimed that one of them blew up on him like that. Actually, so yeah, feeding back is great, but have a mechanism to recover that energy, especially if it can regauge it. It'd be silly not to. Yeah, you just physically, if it's piezo, you physically hit it and it triggers. It's like giving it a barbecue lighter. So the pulse, the cell, it's like you give it a negative pulse. It responds with a bigger pulse. You divert that pulse to the next cell, which triggers the next cell, which triggers the next cell, and then, feed it back. Simple as that, really. But yeah, the piezo facilitates the triggering it with external fields or hitting on it, vibrations. But you don't need the piezo if you're gonna trigger it electrically or with it against another cell and feed them back or whatever within your pile. So, but it's really cool though with the addition of the piezo plates because it's a good, like, if you're wondering if you're saturated with unusual fields or something, you can just put this thing on the table, and if the light bulb starts running on its own, that there's some external stimuli, like a trigger in it. So it could be interesting for censoring, sensors for the paranormal stuff too, because slight variance would be able to trigger it. So it could be good as a sensor. I would do it that way more for a sensor actually to see if there's some weird waves going on that if especially when you're playing with the curl and the spin of time itself. Um, it's the equivalent of like when you're in a swimming pool and you're a party and everybody starts going around and around and around and the pool starts building that spin, right? And then everybody stops, but the moment that everybody stops, not everybody is settled. They're all going with it. And the only thing that's going to eventually slow that down is the passage of time until it settles down. So sometimes when we initiate these weird waves, it's not always as simple as turning off the generator and the phenomenon disappears. Sometimes, literally, it's the passage of time itself that will dissipate the effect. So if something is going wrong, you might not be able to turn it off right away, which could be pretty scary. So it makes you think twice, anyways, about safeguards. Yes, they vibrate with an electrical pulse as well. Electrical pulse, a sound pulse, a vibration. Yeah, they're very, very reactive to any kind of stimulation that would affect its structure at the molecular level. There you go. He said it. Anything that temporarily deforms the crystalline structure. That's it. Anything at all will trigger a reaction. So it's a good sensor for sure. Yeah, well, the hysteresis, that's what John Bedini was doing with his magnetization and during the pulse, and it flips the polarity, and it looks like it goes faster. It's more efficient. That's one of the Bedini tricks, actually. He doesn't talk much about it, though. I don't know why, but that's something he's got up his sleeve or had up his sleeve. So let's see now. 11:15. I better wrap it up for now. This was just a you know what I don't understand, folks, is every time I stop the live, this chat goes away. I don't know if you guys see it after, but When I go to the archive of the video, I don't see the conversation, which I find kind of weird because in others that I've seen the conversation and I don't see it. There's one setting that says something like live playback or just regular mode. I've tried both of them, and I don't know if it's because I'm the creator, so I don't see it. But I find that kind of odd because I'd like people to be able, on the off, you know, non-live version of it, that you can follow along or read what people have to say. Because every time, like I'm going to end the stream now in a few minutes because I'm wrapping it up, but I hate to lose all of the stuff that's in the chat. So I'm just saying, you folks, if there's some important points, you might want to like paste it in the video comments. Just giving you a heads up because I'm not too sure what I have to do on my end here to save that so that YouTube shows it when people play it back. So until I figure it out, I thought I'd just give a heads up on it. So if there's anything you guys have said in the chat window here, to just paste it as a video comment. So. Alrighty, folks. So, anyways, whoever's watching, everyone there, thank you for spending part of the evening here. And like I said, it was just random rambles, just taking it from here. And yeah, I guess I'll just keep posting as I do, as I make meaningful, what I would think are good contributions, anyways. So. With that said, folks, wherever you may be, have a good night or a good day or a good morning or whatever. And until next time, folks.